Welcome to Faith Channel, nurturing, learning, and hearing.
Welcome back to another episode of Your Faith Journeys. And this is where we intersect between the faith and the secular world. And today we're going to have a special broadcast because this brother that's coming on now, he brings it when he brings it. So I love him just like my son from another mother. And but we're going to dedicate this broadcast to Bishop O, who passed a few years ago, but his spirit lives on in all of us. Wow. Mm. So you had rep when you walked into prison. You also was a target too. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I denounced my gang in prison. I began to study. I became friends with the librarian. I started really finding my faith in prison. Just the belief in God came more visible in my life because when I started reflecting in my life on the many opportunities that I've had and the many things that I escaped, I said it couldn't be nobody but God that was shaping me for this moment. And so ultimately, I did a lot of work in prison, brought gangs together in prison. I did a whole discography on what I did in prison. But this was another God moment for me. I was in a day room and the news was on, and I'm in prison, bringing brothers together, Bloods and Crickets. I denounced my gang in prison. Like that's something you don't do. I want to advise nobody that unless you really for real, for real. But
You want a death sentence.
yeah, but I denounced my gang. You know, denouncing your gang means that you don't have the protection, and then you're a target.
Right, exactly.
And so for me though, I had said to myself, Kurt, that if I was out in the free world, willing to risk my life defending the gang, then I will go equally as hard risking my life to denounce the gang, right? And so I stood on that, and so I started bringing people together. The more I talked about it, the more I was being out front with it. I started seeing a lot of brothers drawing near who probably felt like I felt, but didn't have the courage to step out for fear of retaliation and otherwise, and ridicule. And so I was making that be an example in prison. And I was bringing, I seen on a micro level, these brothers was Bloods, Crips, they were coming together, Vice Lord, Gangster Site. We all at the table, right? And we finding that we had a lot of stuff in common, that we brothers, and we got the same fears and same this, and I saw that, right? And right at the time I saw that, I'm in the day room. The day room in prison is like this, probably in every prison across America. When the story's on, like One Life to Live, Victor
You
Newman,
said that TV.
you better not make a sound in the day room. You will get beat down for making a sound while the story's on. But when the news on, it is chaos. You can't hear the TV. And I
Wow.
never, I made a mental note of that, and I never understood that. I couldn't get that. I'm like, why they don't want to know what's going on in the world? But you'll sit and watch the story. That's a whole different story for a whole different time. But on this particular day, the news came on and it was quiet. It was eerily quiet, full of people, but quiet. People were listening. And I made a mental note of that because that never happened while I was in prison. It never happened. And in his frame come on the news, it was this young brother who he was like this, looked like I couldn't tell if his eyes were open or they not. He was talking,
Boy, me.
right? And not only that he was talking, he was in my neighborhood, Fraser Courts. Not only that he in Fraser Courts, in the next screen, he had two of my cousins with me. Two of my first cousins, who I know there's no way in the world they would be on the news. They would get on the news and talk, given the history. So it automatically made me say, who is this brother? And so as he was talking, it was Omar, Bishop Omar Jawar. He was Omar Jawar then. As he was talking, I heard the rhythm, the cadence of what he was saying. It was so assuring and affirmation to what I was doing in prison with the brother. He was speaking the exact same language. I knew it was God. I said, "This God." And I immediately wrote my cousin saying, "Hey, whoever that guy y'all was on the news with, I need to meet him." And I didn't know they were telling Omar at the time because I didn't know Omar. They were telling him, they said, "Hey man," because he was talking about gang intervention and prevention, how we help deal with the gang, how we bring people together. And they were telling him, they said, "Hey brother, if you're gonna do something in this neighborhood, you gotta get with our cousin who in prison." They were talking about me.
Mm.
So fortunate, man, fortunately I was released from prison probably about 8 months after that, seeing him on the news, man. And when I met Omar, it was history. When I met that
Yeah.
brother in person, man, Oh, Kurt, it was history. I knew God had connected us. I knew that after our first conversation, I knew that he was, if I could paint it like this, he was the salesperson and I was the product. I knew it.
I
I knew
love that. I
I
love
knew
that.
it, man. This Me and this brother Kurt, when we first met, man, he was telling me about what he was doing in the streets. And when he finished, I went in my bag and handed him something I typed up in prison, and he read it. And when he read it, it was the exact same words he was just talking verbatim. We were using the same words. And I
Mm.
remember him looking over at me. He looked at me with this look, and he just looked again, and he said, "Look," he said, "Man, you can put that up, man. We're gonna do this together." And
Yeah, I love
and we stayed together, man. Man, Omar, man, I love that brother. I miss him. I love him. He
it,
he was
man.
one of those person that only come around once in a man. This brother was so talented, so smart, so intuitive, so connected to God, man, that sometimes you wouldn't even believe the stuff that would happen for him because of his faithfulness to God and what he did. I watched him for 21 years. I rode shotgun with him for 21 years.
Mm.
As, as he just he gave of himself. He always gave credit to God. I mean, he was a family man. He was everything that I wanted to be. And God gave me the perfect model in him. God gave me that, said, this is the example. You know, he wasn't perfect, but this brother, man, I don't have no words to describe him. I miss him because, man, the wisdom that came from this brother, man, I can't sum it up in words. I wouldn't do it no justice. I owe him my life, man. Just the work he did, the way he cared for community, the way he cared for people, all of the lessons that he taught me
Oh,
that's
yeah.
applicable today. Man, I could just be riding and thinking of stuff that he said that's just wisdom laced that I'm just not realizing, the totality and the impact of what he was saying. And so me and Omar, we did the first gang peace treaty in Dallas. Man, we've done so much work together across this country, Dallas, but across this country, it's man, I can't even conjure up the right words just to describe uh, everything we've done and the impact he's had on our life and the many people that we've helped along the way. I mean, we've helped a lot of people in private along this way who can give you a same kind of story narrative that I can give, in terms of the impact he had on my life.
Yeah, I remember Anton. When I'm gonna do a slight correction because I'm older than you anyway, so I can do
Yes, you can.
that.
You can.
Hey, you said across this country. I'm gonna say across this world
Yes,
because we had the pleasure to joining you and Bishop Omar in St. Petersburg, Russia, and
yes,
that was a totally out
man.
of the box experience for me. I know it was,
Yes,
and but to be in you guys' company, going to Russia and sharing with people about solutions that could be incorporated in Russia that
man.
we were doing in America, that was powerful, man. That was powerful. That was one of my
Yeah,
best times in my life that I experienced, and luckily, Bishop Omar and you were part of that just as well. So I want to thank you for that. But also, I
great.
remember I remember Omar dropped this nugget on me. He was doing a conference, and both of us was there at the conference. He said that the kids that we work with are at -9,
Yes,
and
yes,
our goal is to get them to 0, and then we got to really start working for them. But he said, if you're doing this type of work
yes,
and you get them to 0 and you don't not willing to take them any further, don't even mess with it. Don't even bother with it because
yes,
you're damaging them as individuals.
right. And he was making that point, man. And I never forget. It was an older white lady. She had some pearls on, white hair, and she said to Omar, and Omar quick wit. Omar was quick wit. He thinks like this. The lady said, "So, Mr. Jawar," she said, "Are you implying that you would have felons working with kids? And Omar said this. He said, man, with all due respect, it probably was felons who made the kids. And everybody fell out laughing. Everybody fell out
Oh,
right because nobody never even thought about that. He said, man, it was probably a felon who made the kids that we working with. And so just that kind of quick wit Omar was good for. I never forget one time we was in a meeting, and I use this today because in ways of talking about how we fund the work that we do and how we when people talk about data and measurement. Bishop Omar Jawar, who we dedicating this show to, man, Bishop Omar, let me just say that is one of the most impactful individuals that I ever came in contact with. I knew he was divinely inspired, led by God from the first day I met him. And that brother has poured so much and imparted so much in me as a youngster, coming to a man. He helped me through many, many situations, man, that I was going through. And he was just a talented, God-fearing brother who was the epitome and example of what it means to be a God-fearing, community-loving, family man.